Welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at ArtistFirst.com. And now here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And we're going to have a genuine conversation tonight.
Well, we do try to have genuine conversations all the way through.
And it's going to take sacrifice on your part.
Yes.
So anyway, tonight we're talking about we are going to be talking about talking about meaning, and in essence, what we're all searching for, which is to find meaning in our lives, but in general, and in our relationships, our conversations, and the goals that we set for ourselves. And to start with the least of them, people tend to put goals first. But if you really drill down, it's because they're glossing over the other two things. They're like, relationships, I have those, and conversation. But goals, I've got to be, got to do, got to this. And oftentimes the neglect of the sacrifice necessary to have a meaningful relationship, and we'll define that, or the sacrifice that you have to offer up in order to have a meaningful conversation, to experience, a large part of meaningful conversation is something that people don't do often, which is listening. Many people have conversations, which in essence consist of, and we've talked about this in the past, in essence they consist of waiting for the other person's lips to stop flapping so that you can put your golden points in. And that's not a conversation. It's often a competition where people are just kind of wanting to get their point in. And one of the things that you sacrifice, Mark, when you have a real conversation is you sacrifice your time. If you're going to actually have a conversation with somebody about something, you've got to sit there and be with them. You've got to be present enough to listen to them.
Yes. And just being present is not an easy thing nowadays, especially. You have to be aware enough to know when you are actually with the person in the moment, or your mind is off someplace else trying to figure out something, or you're concerned about the next step that you've got to take. And a meaningful conversation is one that you both have agreed that now is the time that we're going to speak of something that is resonating inside of you. There's something that you can't let go of, or it needs expression. And one of the ways people process their experiences is by talking it out with someone else. And there are those that have never been listened to. They've been sort of trying to fulfill that role in themselves and trying to process things. But the most useful and effective way to work out your process is by talking with someone else who is willing to hold space for you to begin to explore what it is that you're going through.
Willing to listen to you. And the other part of that is important too. And Margaret is I'll say it this way, she's a past master at really allowing people to talk to her. I'm not like that. People come up and try to talk to me, and I go, that's nice. Because I'm less open, I'm less inviting. If I'm going to have a conversation, I'd like it to be something I choose, but But a more sophisticated or a higher level of being able to enter into a conversation is to be willing to listen to the uninvited or to the unexpected opportunity to hear. And that sounds convoluted, but it's as simple as this. We oftentimes, when we had our store for about 10 years, and we sold rocks and gems, and the public came in and the public went out. And very often the public would come in and you would detect some, because you're very sensitive to these things, some need for them to speak. It doesn't always have to be about some trouble or some great trauma or disturbance, but people, as you just said, had gone through, let's say, a long period of their lives, maybe their whole lives, where no one was ever willing to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Or, more acutely, they'd have a problem or a concern. And, we all, let's just say broadly, we all understand when we see somebody that they may be under some sort of stress. You can feel that in your soul, because you yourself recognize the signs, let's say, of stress on another. But you are given the opportunity, you can say, well, I don't really want to hear about it, because I've got my own problems, I don't have the time. You're in essence saying to yourself, I'm not willing to sacrifice my current whatever it is I want to do to hear the story of this other. But Margaret's not like that. Margaret sees somebody who has something weighing upon them, and she just literally, I'm not sure exactly what you do. There's some energetic, because it's not necessarily a specific set of words, tell me what's on your mind or something. There's an energetic opening, and you signal to these people that you're willing to listen to them. And then the story comes out. And you receive their story, and they literally, as you just said, they process what's going on. They literally unburden themselves. They find themselves, and there's an odd point in these conversations, and I've witnessed many of them. I'm not really part of them, but I'm witnessing them, where they get a weird look on their face, and they say to themselves, I'm telling all this to a complete stranger. Am I crazy? but then that doesn't get expressed. It's like there's some internal voice, what are you doing? And they go, but it feels good. It feels right. It feels like what I should be doing. And so they say, I'm not going to give this opportunity up. It's been too long. I've got to say this. And I know it sounds crazy. So they get this weird look on their face, and you detect that too, and you just kind of reach out a hand, or you kind of steady them. You say, no, it's okay. I am willing to sacrifice my moment at this moment to listen to you. And one of the things we wrote, that was going to get posted up on the website, is that provides the sacrifice of the other to listen and to enter into an actual conversation, provides meaning, because the other, the person who is speaking, the person who is burdened and is unburdening or processing, is suddenly aware that this is a meaningful exchange, that this is an actual energy is being exchanged here, and things are really happening in my psyche and in my soul and in my spirit, and this captures this rather evokes this sense of meaning, and years later, decades later, Margaret will be walking through the odd store, and somebody will, from across the room, come running, Margaret, and you're like, hi. Do I know you? Or sometimes you recognize them, but it's because they had a meaningful, deep, revelatory experience in whatever amount of time, and sometimes they would come back 2 or 3 times to the store. But we haven't seen them in a long time. It's been over a decade, maybe closer to 15 years or so. And yet these people remember you because of what? Because of the meaningful sacrifice of listening to them. And it's not just it's exchanging. It's having a a conversation. It's providing them space. But it gave that interchange a deeper meaning than, and I'll say this, it's the same sort of thing that you get if you approach somebody who's under great stress or duress with compassion in your heart. You feel their pain. This is a meaningful sacrifice. You allow their pain to enter you and to become part of your psyche. The meaningful sacrifice is what gives value to the interchange, and what gives the person who is hurting a touch point that they come back to years later and say, well, that right there was where something changed. Something was cured, was removed, was moved, was allowed me to process it. Processing it is an active thing. You digest. It comes in and it's bulky and it needs grinding and marling and digesting, and you pass it through your system, and it may nourish you, or you may just need to get rid of it. But the point is, it doesn't just bollocks up and stay somewhere and become an obstacle, a block, like an energetic block. You're moving some sort of block here.
Yeah, and it's usually a block that within their own etheric body that occurs, and it holds the memory of whatever the trauma was right there.
Indeed, yeah.
So they can never get rid of it because it's been pushed under the consciousness, under the radar, and it still affects them whether they realize it or not.
It can become pain body.
Well, yes, it affects any of the choices you make or the way you look out at life. It forms this bollocks. You might have energy flowing, but it's not flowing freely. And there's a lot of constraint on the flow of the energy. So when someone needs this to be untangled, frankly, God presents an opportunity for them, because you have to want this to be moved. If you're happy with the bollocks and the crazy, and you really, there's another reason why you don't want it straightened out. It could be almost anything. But when you're ready, the opportunity will present itself, and someone will be there to hold space for you. And that's really kind of the first step. You're meeting someone who is a complete stranger, but you are churning on the inside with whatever the turmoil might be or the concern. And that becomes very apparent. So being willing to sacrifice your time, your space that you're going to be in, because you have to create space for them to speak into. And then it takes energy to be able to help process this. And really what happens is your heart, whether compassion rises in you for this person, is the power plant for this. This is when the divine touch comes in and God's love comes in and basically gives you the fuel in which to begin this whole process.
And the words too. Sometimes.
Yes,
yeah.
Most times. It's not. It's God's grace coming in and allowing you, giving permission, allowing for your being to be in this space and time, and creating a space so that they may speak into it, so they can begin to process things. And that's when it usually happens, when all of this spills over and begins to fill the space. And what you do there is you hold ground so that it's not an erratic flow that's coming out of them. It's navigating that flow so that they understand that it's not just them speaking into a void.
Yes.
All right. It is the interaction between another human soul, one soul speaking to another soul, on issues that resonate with the soul. It's not resonating with your mental faculty, because the bollocksing of energy is a life force, and the soul is so intimately connected with that life force. So when it's bollocksed, your life becomes constrained and it can't move. And the soul wants to move. The soul always wants to move. It needs flow.
There's an imperative there, yeah.
Yeah, it needs flow. The mind is quite happy spinning in its little box there, or its little sphere, and chasing its tail around between your ears. Very happy to do that. But the soul, in order to grow, searches for fertile ground or fertile space in which to stretch out and begin processing. So the soul knows when there is a rich space of life that they can begin to expand into. And when that happens, they usually don't just open up and just throw everything out that they've been worrying about. It comes out in pieces, mostly because the soul wants to see what is going on with me. Why am I doing this? Why do I feel this way? And it's searching for what is going on. I feel this. I don't know what I'm feeling.
I mean, there's a few things there which I want to make sure that, the softness you spoke of, the fertile ground, is also analogous to the space. When you give space to a person's, when you offer space, a sacrifice, it's fertile ground. It allows their processing to have a place to occur. Mm-hmm. Now, you say to yourself, why can't you do it on your own? Well, you can, but it requires introspection and sort of a deeper understanding. So at a certain point, you can have a revelatory experience, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a way to process and move forward, process and get rid of or understand blockages in your energetic flow, in the way that energy and life force moves through you, and where it becomes, as Margaret said, bollocks, where there are blocks in the river, dams or junk that's slowing down the flow. So this revelatory experience is a way of clearing those things. And if you have deep introspection, the ability to, in essence, abstract yourself, well, what clouds all that? Well, the ego clouds it constantly. And Margaret mentioned the mind is quite happy keeping things on the sympathy page and keeping things on the daytimer page and keeping things on the let's have a meeting of the minds and agree to disagree type of page. Well, people can be incredibly damaged and still be incredibly efficient and effective in running their lives and looking like they're great until it all falls apart. And they have this great crisis of meaning. What's the meaning of my life? Mm-hmm. Why do I feel so terrible? Why does everyone around me, treat me this way? Or why do I feel so badly about how I treat others? This great existential crisis is because the hollowness, the lack of flow throughout all their energetic centers, the mind and the ego, the voices that schedule your life every second of the day, are perfectly happy in that place because they're getting what they want. And they could care, a tinker's damn about your soul, because the ego just is a parasite on this energy. It just, as long as there's enough, it doesn't care. Now, the heart, the consciousness, the being, feels this lack. feels this pain, it is within you, within the person, and it does tremendous damage. This is where psychoses, neuroses, various forms of emotional and psychological damage to the actual physical body, because all these things have an expression in the physical, can occur from all these blockages. You see many forms of let's say archaic forms of medicine, chi flows, the ways of straightening out your chakras, which are also energy centers. These are all different modalities to affect these types of healings, and they're incredibly effective and useful. And they have come from a great, long, thousands of years long tradition, because this is the human being. All of the stuff you throw on top of it, everything, the internet and all that stuff, the daytimers and all that stuff, is the mind having a wonderful time knitting itself. But the being below is the part that needs to move. And when you have broken the channels that allow it to move, the flows, the energetic portions of you, the damage to them builds up. It becomes systemic, endemic. It becomes inflammatory. It causes all kinds of other issues. And the last thing I wanted to make sure that we made a good point about was that, and I mentioned this is a revelatory experience. You can have these experiences in and of yourself. I think Peterson, and some of what we're talking about tonight is coming out of Jordan Peterson's many of his talks, but others have talked about it as well. But he says that the revelatory experience can be had through your own introspection. You can reach out, open yourself, receive a healing, a spirit connection, but it requires a tremendous amount of internal, already had discipline. It requires a tremendous amount of introspection and ability to quiet the mind, quiet the ego, get in touch with your actual being, be in presence, as Tolle would say. Many people don't have that. They're completely occluded and occupied with the mind and with all the knitting. And so you need the other. You need someone there who just says, I just need to talk about this in so many words, because that way, as I say it, and it is received and actually listened to, and then actually brought back to you with a, yes, this experience it's a true thing. It's you're right to feel this way. You have to release these fears and traumas, whatever it is. That gives them the ability to heal themselves through this processing. And if you don't have it, it just blocks up and gets literally worse and worse by the day.
Well, if you do not find the space or create the space yourself, it does get locked down somewhere in your body. And if the flow has been very poor in that section of your body, usually your body starts breaking down there, because that flow is life, and the body needs the flow of life to reinvigorate it, to heal it, and to have that sense of aliveness down to the tips of your fingers and throughout every cell of your body. You have life flowing through you. And we are given each other, other people, in order to experience this. And how precious it actually is. Because without the ability to feel alive in a real conversation, And feeling alive in a real conversation means that there is meaning that comes through the back and forth between the two people. There is some revelatory, as you said, acknowledgement also comes in, encouragement.
Witnessing.
Mm-hmm. And just witnessing literally is allowing someone the space to go through whatever it is they have to go through. And you're there as a witness. You literally help that person process their life so that everything that they're doing has meaning. Breathing, simply breathing in and out, suddenly has meaning because it's a representation of the flow of your own life.
You also are there to reconnect them or to remind them that they are a being, because your witness is saying, I am you. You are me. We are both beings. And your trouble, your injury is my injury. Not that your trouble in your life are unique, your own, your energy, your choices, everything is you. But when it all weighs heavily upon you and you don't understand why you feel as you feel, you open up to another, because that's an isolating feeling. The isolating feeling is, well, it's just me. I'm the one. It's everyone else is fine and I'm bad. Everyone else is fine and I'm damaged. Everyone else is fine and I'm the outcast. And you say, you very timidly or very with great trepidation, you reveal that I'm not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're almost like, well, someone's just going to say, well, that's just you. Everyone else is fine. What do who needs you? Get out of here.
That is the fear.
That's the fear.
That is the fear that somehow you just don't belong in humanity.
Right, and people even say to themselves, like, everyone else's life is wonderful, and look at me, I'm miserable. I can't do anything. Everything about me is falling apart. Everything I touch turns to dust. And the actual truth of it, of course, is that we are all wounded healers. We're all damaged. We all have exactly the same types of problems, and with an infinite number of ways to get there. And so when you open yourself up and witness it, you become the softness, you become the fertile ground. You just say, I am you. And your trouble right now was my trouble, or will be my trouble, or certainly I can recognize that this is nothing special about you, nothing you did wrong, nothing you did right. It just is.
This is a human condition.
Human condition.
You are in the same human condition as I am.
So the witnessing, Margaret does this witness, you're reconnecting these people who believe the ego has told them that you're special, that what you did was wrong and bad and you deserve all these things, or that everyone else is...
You're singled out.
You're singled out.
Special has a different connotation.
Right, but you're, it's like, woe is me, everyone else is wonderful. And you just very, very timidly, with great fear in your heart, say, well, I don't feel so well. And somebody says, I'll listen to you. I hear you. I know what you're feeling. I felt that way too, or I feel that way too. Tell me. I will stop what I'm doing, because it's more important to witness. I can see that this is not some frivolous thing. You know that instantly, viscerally. This is somebody who is with great trepidation, opening themselves up, almost expecting to be shut down immediately, because that's what the world does often. Yet they're trusting one more time, and the precious thing that they're giving you is this trust. And the precious thing that you're giving them, that you're sacrificing, is your time. And that littlest of opening they will leap into if it's true. And as I think Peterson said, and you'd be surprised to find how noble and wonderful and great and honorable and awesome people are if you just will listen to them.
No, it's true.
Listen to their story.
Yes.
And see, put nothing on the table. It doesn't matter what they look like or what they sound like or what race they are or what color they are. None of that. You just sit there and open your heart and your mind and listen to their story, and you will be just, first of all, completely, totally absorbed by it, because it is a human story, unique in its billions and as common as your everyday experience. And you will find yourself even getting your own. You'll get all the reward of it too, because you're getting the energetic flow of listening, of hearing, of experiencing that other's presence, and they're getting to unburden, to reconnect, to the revelatory reconnection to spirit, which they've been denying themselves because they feel as though they don't deserve it anymore. Mm-hmm. And they know they're wrong. They know they're wrong. Their heart knows that that's wrong, but the heart doesn't get to talk a lot because the ego is always yelling about something. And so the heart finally says, let's try this one. This person looks like they might listen. Okay. And we'll take a little leap of faith, because that's what it is. And you sacrifice your whatever ego. Oh, you got to do this. No, I will stop all that. I will listen to you. And a very meaningful, and it doesn't have to be long. It can be 10 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour. And a meaningful exchange happens that people remember for a long, long time, maybe the rest of their life, you know.
It's reintroducing them to their spirit.
Yeah.
Because spirit, every human spirit is truly a flame of the divine.
Mm.
And if you can embrace the fact that every single person has that spark within them, you can help them unearth that, because the spark of the divine that's in you and is lit, I mean burning, and they see that, and usually that's the first attractor. That frequency that comes out of the spark of the divine out of you is infinitely attractive. And the human soul gravitates towards that. They see the light, and I like that. I want that. I want to have that in me. So they go over there just like, it's more than curiosity. There's a part inside that says, go over there. Just go there.
There's an imperative.
Mm-hmm. And when they begin to engage, that's when the flame that you are, the light that comes out from your heart, warms their soul, literally, until they come to a point where they ignite.
Where they just re-understand that they are also that flame.
Yes. They're discovering, because they see you, they realize this is what they want to see. But that's when the realization comes in that the spark that they see in front of them is the same spark that is within them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they start, they're ignited, then the two souls are mirroring this frequency one to the other, and that's when resonance happens. And it amplifies, and it's such an amazing experience. That's when meaning steps in. And suddenly you realize there's so much more meaning than what you thought was happening. It's the rest of you that's expressing itself, and you're like, this is meaningful.
This is meaningful, and you know it without even the words. But I don't want to go too far past this. You know, this is where a relationship begins, and a lifelong relationship starts with that recognition of the presence of the flame in the other and the resonance. But relationships over their whole course, require another thing. They require sacrifice. We talk about a conversation with another soul, and this is important. But the thing that people, again, they kind of get this reversed. The most important thing in your life is your relationships. Your relationships are all about seeing the being, feeling the resonance with the other, and these are, again, we're talking about meaningful relationships. And when people have relationships which are not meaningful, these sort of serial dating or whatever, this hookups and, oh yeah, I have 50 boyfriends, 50 girlfriends, whatever it is. But you notice that what that runs down into is, what am I doing with my life? What's the meaning of my life? I feel so empty. And in fact, each one of those things is a bollocks, a waste of life, a energy spent and not returned. And you wear yourself out, you burn yourself out. You see some famous figures in the news these days, and yes, they've done all these things, this one and that one, this escapade, this hookup, these drugs, that drugs. And you look at them with your heart's eyes and you say they're hollow, empty, burnt out husks who are just almost to the point of utter soul exhaustion, looking for meaning. Now, contrast that if you have one actual, real relationship, your best friend or your spouse, your significant other, that can carry you through every trial and trouble. You can be in the most difficult of circumstances, war, pestilence, disease, death, and that relationship which you've sacrificed for, and which even through the vicissitudes, that's a good one, vicissitudes of life together, you've had to sacrifice for each other, that infirmity will come. The old wedding vows, rich or poor, sickness and health, till death do us part. Well, those vows sound trite and people don't understand them, but those are in essence words of sacrifice. When your significant other is afflicted with a disease or has some particular trouble, you must sacrifice to maintain the relationship. You may have to provide at that moment, more energy into the relationship. Similarly, if you're afflicted, this adds meaning. All the trouble that you go through in a relationship, and it can be many things. The loved ones become ill. You become infirm. Your spouse becomes infirm. Whatever. All these things. What happens to us all? Because we're not special. Nobody is special in that way. We're all going through life together. Yet, if you have someone to share it with, it becomes lighter. And that person becomes... Margaret and I have shared experiences which are unique to our relationship and which nobody else can understand. And we can look at each other and say, and just a couple of words or a phrase or just a look, and we know why it means something to us. And we're different, unique, individual people, each with our own spark of the divine. But the relationship has become more and more meaningful because the shared life together and the shared energy together in navigating through what life does to you. And life does every blessed thing to you until you're shuffled off the planet. And we all go through it. But to have another with you is a tremendously important thing. And it gives meaning to your entire life. It gives meaning to your entire life to have a meaningful relationship. And that's why there's so few. People say, I have thousands of friends and thousands of girlfriends and thousands of boyfriends. You've got no meaning in any of those. Sorry. You have one meaningful relationship, a friend, a spouse, a parent, a child, or any of those, because they're all meaningful. You've done well. Your life has meaning. You have somebody with whom you have shared experiences and sacrifice, mutual sacrifice. Children, who doesn't sacrifice for their children? But then again, those children in your infirmity, they sacrifice for you in many ways. You do things for your parents. You honor them. But they did for you. They honored you. They raised you. They taught you how to eat. You know.
They fed you.
They fed you. You know, they're concerned about your every way. You know, my mom is nearly 90 years old, and she still says, you really should be eating this, and you should be, and because she's concerned. She has a relationship with me which will go on past both of our deaths. Because that's an important thing. And you can count your really meaningful relationships on a very low number. You know, I could say the fingers of one hand, but maybe it's a little more. But the real meaningful ones, not even just family, but really meaningful relationships, are few and far between because they require some sacrifice and they give far more back to you.
Right. It's allowing yourself to have the ability to extend past what you think are your boundaries. A relationship like that is unconditional. You're talking of unconditional love because you already know what the other person is like. And there's plenty of flaws on both sides. But you're willing to say, well, you make space for it. There it is. That habit or whatever, there it is again. And there's a lot of grace there to, if it's a bad habit, you're going to try to help them and let them see that, you know, this really isn't good for you. Or if it's a good habit, like, yes, this will take you far in your endeavors, whatever you're planning to do. Being able to focus to the point where you've mastered yourself. But that's another story.
That's another soul of EveryMan.
But when you are capable of realizing that the give and take from one human being to another is the most precious thing that you can possibly do in your life. Has nothing to do with the amount of money you're making or the prestige you may get out of a job or a house, big house or a big car, whatever. It's understanding that what really matters is whether or not you've allowed meaning to come into your moment. Especially with another person. And that means that there's got to be an openness to the heart as well as a broadness to the soul. And allowing another person to be able to grow. It's not a conversation of one-upsmanship.
No.
We've all been in conversations like that.
Yeah, and they're not conversations. They're, as I said, competitions.
Yeah. But to allow space so that another soul may explore and grow in their life, exploring to the point where they actually are taking in tools that they will be able to utilize for the rest of their lives. That is a very precious gift. And that is worth sacrificing for.
And it acquires meaning thereby. You know what we haven't done is read the quote, but if you want, I'll read it. And we can kind of, we have gone through it a bit.
Yeah, but if you could, that would be great.
So this is a Peterson quote, and it's really lovely. It's about conversation. So genuine conversation is exploration, articulation, and strategizing. When you're involved in a genuine conversation, you're listening. and talking, but mostly listening. Listening is paying attention. It's amazing what people will tell you if you listen. Sometimes if you listen to people, they will even tell you what's wrong with them. Sometimes they will even tell you how they plan to fix it. And sometimes that helps you fix something wrong with yourself, Jordan Peterson. Now, Peterson, of course, is a psychologist, and a lot of what he does is listening. But the key here for me when I read through this was listening is paying attention. And when you think of paying, there's a cost involved. You are paying attention. If you are truly listening to someone, you're not doing something else. Okay? You're engaging with them on a being level. You can pay attention in a meeting. You can pay attention when you're driving. You can do all those types of things. But in a conversation, it's two ways. You're going to be required to listen, and then you're also going to be required to opine. In a conversation, you're trading things back and forth. You're not just, making sure you stop at a red light or taking notes during your meeting. Those are mental things. Those are good things. Do stop at red lights. Do take notes during your meetings so your boss doesn't get mad at you. But if you're having a genuine conversation with a person, first it may start by just saying, tell me, I'm here. Tell me what's wrong with you. Tell me what you're feeling. I see that you look upset. Or just simply, how are you doing in a truly meant way, I'll just say, yes, how you doing? Good, good, good. And you move on with your life. But if you see or sense that a person, especially someone you have a relationship with, and you see something weighing upon you, and oftentimes you'll, get recent experience, oftentimes you'll get the kind of, it shows, and you say to them, I know you well enough. It's not like you're wearing it on your sleeve, but I know you. I feel you. We have a relationship. I know that you've got something on your mind. What is it? And if you're truly genuine, you've basically given them the space. You've said, here's your stage in so many words. Tell me what's on your heart. People say, tell me what's on your mind. No, leave the mind out of it. Tell me what's on your heart. And if you do that, you open yourself up and say, well, what's on your heart? You'll hear about the heart. But what we need to do is wind this up a little bit, but I'm going to leave it to you, Ma. You wind it up a little bit.
Oh, all right. Well, heart true is something that is worth sacrificing for. And I hope that this conversation has given you some meaning. So, I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
Thank you for sacrificing.